from his point of view, and I said this the other night, I thought if he finished second this season and it was pretty narrow and Rangers had performed well post-split and made a fight of it, I thought he'd have been into next season with a lot of support, a lot of backing. I think the fans would have been behind it, as disappointed as he'd been not to win a title. If they were second behind Hearts, had made a fist of it, I think they would have backed him starting next season. What's happened now with the danger of finishing third, has put major pressure on him, I think, at the start of next season. I still don't doubt. I know there's a lot of talk about his future even now. For me, there's no doubt. Danny Rohl will start the next season as Rangers manager. But what I think these last couple of results have done and the reaction after them, he's put himself under major pressure. I mean, how many times have we said that about a Rangers manager getting into the start of a new season? If he doesn't get off to a flyer, then he's going to have some real scrutiny on him, that's for sure.
Scott, you said that he will be in charge next season. I'm going to ask both of you, though, should he be?
I think he should. And I know he's under pressure, and he's had a lot of criticism even since Monday night. I know a lot of punters aren't happy, rightly so, for all the reasons we've just talked about. But I suppose ultimately, the guy has only come in October. I think you need to. He's still a young coach. The owners and the owners and the board now have put a lot of faith in him. They've signed players of a profile, the likes of Nadiri and Romans, Chukwani, for instance, who are at an age where the plan is to develop them and get them better, and hopefully Rangers would hope that they'd sell them on in the future after a bit of success. I don't think they're going to look at Danny Rohl and think it's time to get rid of him just now, because, as I say, when he came in October, it was at an all-time low for them. And I'm not saying that, as we've just discussed, I'm not saying that what he's done deserves credit or he's getting them back in the title race. That's a nonsense. He had to go and try and win the league. However, I do think he'll get the start of next season. I think they'll put enough faith in him. They'll try and back him as much as they can in the summer, because I think they've got belief in this guy. But as I touched on there, I just think for him himself, the circumstances, he's going to be under major pressure. And I've seen it before with Rangers managers getting off to a bad start in the league. First game's going to be away from home. Remember Michael Beale at Kelly dropping points, Clement at Tynecastle dropping points, Russell Martin at Firth Park. It just heaps so much pressure on them. Pressure that's already there. It just heightens it and intensifies it, and I just don't think he can afford that. I think that's the price he's going to pay for this poor end to the season.
More than that, Scott, it's not just the first league game's going to be away from home. The first Old Firm game is going to be away from home. The first game against Hearts will be back at Tynecastle next season. So there you go. There's 3 hurdles, probably all within the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. Yep. That if you lose any of them, never mind 2 or 3 of them, put you sort of on the back foot right away. I mean, in terms of, I do agree. I do think he will get the summer and start the new season. I think he should get that. But I also think in defence of him, I think you mentioned back to the state the club was in October. At that point, people were talking about this being the worst Rangers team in living memory. Okay, he's made 4 signings in January, but is it really reasonable to expect that 4 signings is going to turn around a team that was in the state it was and turn them into title-winning contenders? So what I'm trying to say is that you can't sit there on one hand and go, this is the worst team in living memory, and then go, but they should be winning the title. So,
yeah. And Andy, Douglas will be able to answer this better, but I don't think when Rohl came in, were fans really saying this guy's got to get us back challenging for the title this season? I think people had written this season off. And I'm not saying that you then just give it up and accept anything that happens this season. I think most punters had written it off, realised how bad it was, looked at some of the signings, your Aaronses and Rothwells and people like that, and thought, this is just a disaster season. You just need to see a bit of progression under Rohl, better players coming in. You could argue you've seen a wee bit of that. I think the likes of Romans, Nadiri, and that decent young players.
I think the problem, Scott, is that in big games, when games have, especially when games have changed like they did at Tynecastle, Rohl hasn't impacted it. I mean, we all thought, okay, the first 15 minutes with atmosphere, and it was an incredible atmosphere at Tynecastle on Monday night. Rangers just had to see through the first 15 minutes and play their way into the game. That's exactly what they did. Hearts came out, all guns blazing, went at Rangers for the first 15 minutes. They got through that, obviously get the goal, and then Rangers felt comfortable. But then you thought, well, the same's going to happen again in the second half. Rangers just have to get through that. But even though they get through the first sort of 15 minutes without conceding, there was never a sense that they regain control. Then that's when the Hearts obviously get themselves a couple of goals to take over. When it comes to Rohl, though, at no point, and I think you can think back to, say, the Celtic League game at home, Rangers 2-0 up, battered Celtic for 45 minutes. Celtic obviously changed things, put Hatate in there, and again, that one change to Celtic didn't prompt a response from Rangers. Whatever the response was, it didn't work. And I think that's the thing with their concerns. But I saw somebody make a point on social media this week that says, this is the choice that now faces Rangers this summer. You either stick with a guy who you brought in to reshape the squad and to rebuild it and give him the summer to go ahead and implement the alterations, the changes that he wants, or you try for the sixth time in the 6 seasons that actually we'll just rip it up and the next guy is going to come in and knock the ball at the park straight off the bat and win a league at the first attempt. That's not really how it's going to work. I mean, we're all talking about Steven Gerrard. It took him 3 goals. Right, this season coming will be different in the sense that Celtic are going to have the biggest rebuild that they've had in a long time. Hearts, does their team get picked apart by, this is about Jamestown Analytics. Their whole model is about developing players and selling them on. So what's it going to look like? But I really think that at some point, and again, I was saying this last summer before Russell Martin came in, but I say it again now, at some point, a Rangers board is going to have to stick by a manager, show some faith in him, and give him the time to make the changes that have to be made, because let's be honest, it's been patchwork repairs summer after summer, or a rebuild that then collapses within a couple of months. This team looks disjointed. The squad looks disjointed. There's massive goal gaps in it that need to be properly addressed. Obviously they tried, say, the right winger. They tried with Scott Wilson. Listen, I think you've got to just hold your hands up and say, has it worked? It was on paper, it was a perfect sort of siding. It just hasn't worked. Whether that's down to Danny Rohl's man management or whether Scott Wilson needs to look himself in the eye himself and ask himself where his career's going. I think that's maybe it's more towards the latter. But I think at some point Rangers are just going to have to, and that goes for the fans as much as the board, but they're just going to have to tough it out until they can get themselves in a position where a manager can get the squad and get all the pieces in the places that he needs them. Because every time that they do this, rinse and repeat act to get into October, it's not going well, season's a write-off, throw everything out and start again. It just guarantees you more wasted time and certainly more wasted money.